why is housing in Milton getting a failing grade on our journey to net zero? Why is this where we are, right? Why are we not much further along towards eliminating fossil fuels from this area of construction and housing in general? So to answer these questions, we're going to have our 4 panelists here. We have David Twig, who is a professional urban planner, urban designer, director of planning and policy for the Town of Milton. We have Donna. You guys want to put your hand up when I say your name? We have Donna Freedman, lobbyist for Citizens Climate Lobby of Canada, with a focus on federal policy. We have Greg Moffatt, residential constructor and Passive House certified, and Marina Huisson, architect, sustainability advocate. I can't pronounce her last name, but I gave it a good shot.
You did, give it a good shot.
Okay, so each panelist is going to get 3 minutes to ask a prepared question. After that, you in the audience are going to have the floor to ask your questions of the panelists. So start thinking about your questions now. They can be a totally unrelated question to these ones, or they could be branching off of something they've said or asking for further information. I will also extend it to you guys. If there's something that you really want to say about what another panelist has said, give me a signal with your hand and we'll make some time for you. Okay. All right, first question for David. Are we ready?
We are.
In the context of Canada's commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, how are you planning for more sustainable, affordable, and walkable places to live in our community?
Thank you. And thank you for the invite, Marina. Thank you for all attending, and I'm really excited to see what's going on in the other room and the great activities and actions that others are taking to address this issue. It's very timely as well, because we're just completing our new official plan, and the themes of today, I believe, are embedded throughout that new plan. If you're interested in the new plan, we have our final information sessions taking place actually on Tuesday. There's a virtual session at 12:30, and another at 6:30 in the evening. Does that help? I don't think this is actually picking up anything, but anyway. All right, okay. Oh, I see.
Does it need both? Does it need this one as well? Okay.
Okay, so it's just for recording?
Yes, you should.
Okay.
Don't worry about it.
Now you have 2.
Do I have to hold
All
them
right,
both?
Yeah.
Juggle.
This is cutting into your 3 minutes.
Yeah.
So I'll start with one of the main themes. Actually, as I came into the room, I heard somebody mentioning ARUs. So one of the main themes of the plan is that everyone in Milton really should have the opportunity to find a home within our community, to find a home that suits their needs. Marina touched on the fact that you look at Milton as it's developed over the last few decades, a lot of single detached dwellings, a lot of semi-detached dwellings. I think something like 3/4 of our housing stock are single detached dwellings or semi-detached dwellings. We're planning to actually extend and create a much broader spectrum of housing going forward. ARUs being one of those, secondary suites or basement apartments, whatever you want to call them. They come in many shapes and forms, but basement apartments is the one that I guess people are most familiar with. That's at one end of the spectrum. Then there are apartments in the sort of condo towers that you see. But one of the focuses of the plan really is on addressing what's often referred to as the missing middle. So those typically kind of up to 4 stories in height, perhaps walk-up apartments, townhomes, various types of townhomes. We have all sorts of models of townhomes these days, stacked townhomes, back-to-back townhomes, lane-based townhomes. The list is endless. And the idea is that we'll end up with this much more balanced stock where we effectively have a third of our stock will still be single detached dwellings, semis and so on. We're obviously not going to remove that 70% that exists now. But a third of the stock will be that missing middle, and a third of the stock will be that higher density apartment form. So that's one of the first key planks. The other is creating a situation, again, going back to Marina's reference to Milton being planned around the car. And in many ways, the same as any community has been planned around the car over the past few decades. What we're planning to do is actually create a community where the need to drive is a choice and not a necessity. That you can actually meet your daily requirements by using transit, walking, cycling, and so on, without necessarily resorting to the car. How are we going to do that? We're looking at establishing main centres of homes, shops, places of work, services, and so on. We already have a fantastic centre in our current downtown. It's growing more in terms of what we call the uptown. That will still be our main centre, but we'll have other main centres, the Milton Education Village being one of those. The Agaton plan, which you might have heard about recently, we've been doing some publicity on that, which is focused around a new GO station at the western side of the town along Trafalgar Road. And another main centre in the south of Milton at basically Britannia and James Snow. But beyond that, the neighbourhoods themselves, we're looking to plan them so that people have the ability to walk to a park, a school, shops, and so on within their own neighbourhood without necessarily having to, again, resort to the car.
Yeah. Okay, we're over to Greg now. Greg, is it practical or even possible to build a residential home without using fossil fuels?
It is both practical and possible. And I see that as kind of a two-part question. I guess the first part being operational carbon from fossil fuels, which is attainable if we build a super insulated, airtight envelope and put in good windows, thermal bridging free construction, and put in an excellent mechanical system for air exchange. Then that lines us up to put heat pump in for heating as opposed to a natural gas furnace. And we have options like thermal batteries now, which can replace the hot water tank, and induction heating as opposed to a natural gas range, for example. And we can get to zero operational carbon. The second part of that, I would say, is the actual embodied carbon, which is pretty difficult to eliminate at this time.
Do you want to just quickly explain what that is?
Yes. So embodied carbon is the trains and trucks and everything else bringing material to the sites. It's the generators that we run while we're building before we have access to the power grid. All of those things, even as far as manufacturing of the products and like plastics and
The asphalt
foam
in your
insulations,
shingles.
for example, have a high carbon footprint before they even put them on a truck.
Okay.
So those items are kind of the secondary embedded carbon that goes into the home.
So it depends on where you're drawing the line of, is that included in this construction?
Right. When I read the question or heard the question, I was like, you know, it really speaks to both sides.
Mhm.
It's great if we can build a house that doesn't require the fossil fuels, but it matters how much fossil fuel we're putting in getting there. And, you know, I would say that the systems in Canada are working on that now. We do have some robotic equipment. We have sheep's wool and cellulose and some natural insulating materials. Going back to the robotics, there are systems now that will build entire wall systems that are airtight. They're modular, they're pre-drilled for all the electrical, all the plumbing. So they give a lot better quality of product, if you will, because one of the other difficulties in Ontario and Canada in general is the amount of skilled trades that we have available that are qualified or competent enough to build these kinds of structures. They're not super complicated, but it does have an education barrier currently that would need to be bridge to get everybody building to this level?
To me, this brings up the question of, since it's possible, why are we not doing it, right? So let's turn it over to Marina here and ask her, why are architects, designers, and consultants not designing all buildings to a high-performance fossil fuel-free standard?
Do you think you have enough?
I have enough.
Here.
Well, Pat, I'm glad you asked. I think one of the simple answers to that question is that developers only build what the customers are going to buy. They're looking to the market to find out what it is that you want. You, all of us. And if the answer is the cheapest possible house that will keep me and my family warm and dry and let me park my car in the driveway, that's what I want. Then that's what they'll build. They'll build it because you haven't asked otherwise to the minimum code standards. So the building code says you must have a R value of 22 on your walls. That's what you'll get. If you actually need, in order to do what Greg is saying, an R40 on your walls, that's not included in the package that you just asked for. So the market transformation that's needed to make the developers and the builders build differently comes from your questions, from your desire to make it so. If you approached Greg here and said, build me the best insulated house that uses the least amount of energy, he can do that. And he'd be happy to do that. Call retreats.com, or is it .ca?
.ca.
Sorry, retreats.ca. There are a handful of competent, knowledgeable builders who are Passive House certified, who can do this work. But it's not the developers who are building our subdivisions.
Where is the onus going then, right? Should the responsibility of reducing emissions in the housing sector be up to the developer? Should it be up to the homeowner? Should companies, institutions, and governments be responsible to eliminate fossil fuel use? Where is the onus?
Well, I think like most environmentally conscious people, my first instinct when I learned about global warming and now climate change was to focus on myself and to think about what could I personally do to reduce my emissions. And I looked at things like carbon footprint calculators, and I thought about changing my furnace to a heat pump, or replacing my gas car with an EV, or stop buying beef, or not taking vacations that required air travel. But in fact, this point of view doesn't come by accident. It turns out that the concept of the carbon footprint, that popular measure of personal impact, was the brainchild of an advertising firm that was hired by BP, which is British Petroleum, and which is the second largest non-state owned oil company in the world. And they did this to promote the slant that climate change is not the fault of an oil giant, but it's the fault of us individuals. And the problem is that private individual actions don't increase at a rate sufficient to affect the problem in a timely manner. Collective action is what we need to seek changes, and policy and laws, they can have the impact that we need. So what should we do? The most important thing that you can do is vote and make climate policy an important deciding factor. New research from Citizens Climate Lobby Canada reveals that Canadians who voted for pro-climate candidates in the 2025 election and whose candidate was elected may have reduced their personal greenhouse gas footprint by an average of 13.54 tons, simply by helping to elect a climate-friendly MP. And for context, the average Canadian's household emissions, when you exclude industrial sources, is 5.5 to 6 tons of carbon dioxide per year. So a single pro-climate vote in 2025 offsets more than twice the average household annual carbon footprint. And what else can you do besides voting? You can speak, call, and write to your representatives at all levels of government and political parties and let them know that you want action on the climate crisis. For example, you can let them know that you want reduced emissions in the housing sector. And you can also join an organization like Sustainable Milton, like Citizens Climate Lobby, and advocate on behalf of climate. Climate conscious individual choices are good. We should keep doing them. But it's not enough to save the planet. What we need is collective action to change companies, institutions, and government. And in other words, we cannot solve the climate crisis on our own, but we can do it together.
Well done, Marina.
I completely agree. It's everyone's problem.